We all love flying, but being a frequent flyer can definitely take its toll on the environment. Good thing App in the Air makes it easy to offset your carbon footprint, and it's so much easier than I expected it to be. For example, I bought my parents' flights to Las Vegas through the app recently, and it only cost a couple of dollars to offset the carbon footprint. Best of all, the offset will code as a travel purchase, so you'll earn those bonus points. Check out App in the Air and get 20% off of your next flight when you book directly through the app by using the code Geobreeze at checkout. Thank you to App in the Air for partnering with this episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. Welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipino-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So let's get hacking.
Everything was just so fresh, like fresh seafood, fresh, whether it's shrimp or fish, it was just so fresh. And my husband, where he's from Bangladesh. And so they eat a lot of seafood. So he knows his fish really well. And it was really good. And I think there's just the freshness all around. We just loved it. And just the diversity, like it was just so easily accessible. Like the locals, we'd go out and be like late and be like, no, we can just stir up something for you. And it'd be like, oh, I don't know if we can have this. But, you kind of hesitate, right? Because you're like, okay, should I eat from here? Am I going to get sick? Am I in a foreign country? But it was just so fresh and it was just so good.
Hey there, points people. You just heard a clip from Amena Bakali from Hassan's on Holiday. Amna has been travel hacking for the last 5 years. She shares her family travel hacks and tips and how to travel more while spending less. She teaches individuals how to leverage monthly expenses and turn them into travel rewards for their family and their lifestyle. Her background is in the nonprofit space, where she loves working on projects, causes, and initiatives through various organizations where she can help them do good better. In this episode, Amna and I discuss a recent trip that her family took to Costa Rica using points and miles, and how you can recreate these experiences for your next vacation. If you're just getting started with points and miles, one of the most popular starter cards is the Chase Sapphire Preferred, which transfers to many different travel brands we discuss in this episode, including Southwest and Hyatt. Remember, please never ever apply for a card through Google. Always use a friend or creator's referral links. If you're interested in supporting this show when you apply for your next card, check out geobreezetravel.com/cards. And we have a link to the Chase Sapphire Preferred in the show notes for you as well. And now, on with the show. Hey, Amna, welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Julie. I'm honored. Really excited about this.
I'm so excited to have you. And we are going to talk about Costa Rica, which surprisingly, we have not done an episode about yet. So excited to hear all about your Costa Rica trip and how people can recreate it using points and miles. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and how did you get into the wonderful game of award travel?
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I have been travel hacking, I want to say a little over 5 years now, maybe closer to 6. It's actually pretty interesting how life worked when we got in. My older 2 kids, they were pretty young, and, we knew we wanted to travel. We were trying to cross off all the kiddie stuff off the list, what have you, Legoland, Disney, and, all those kiddie places that you're like, okay, it's easier to go with younger kids. And around the same time, my husband had also switched jobs, and he would be traveling for work, consulting, and then just be able to work remotely. So we're like, okay, cool. And he would travel about 30% of the year. So one trip would easily give us 20, 30, 40,000 points. And after a while, I was like, this is pretty interesting. The points would kick in, and every time the points would kick in, I would find myself on Southwest booking a trip. And I was like, well, there's got to be a way to do this more often without waiting for him to come back from a trip. Because as I'm sure you can guess, it was pretty hard. He'd be gone for days, if not a full week at a time. And so that's kind of how we got started, and just kind of started researching points and miles, rewards programs. And here we are 5 years later.
What were some of the first cards that you got?
Southwest. That was, and I still have that one. That was one of the first that we got. We also did get Chase later on when we got a little bit, let's say a little bit more courage to maybe branch out and get another card. Just because with Southwest, I want to say just because they're so family friendly. And our kids were young at that time. They're a little bit older now. And I know a lot of times the not having the assigned seats bothered people, but that actually doesn't faze us at all. And so we just love just the simplicity of being able to book a flight, cancel it, change our mind. We just love that simplicity with Southwest. So, yep.
Do you guys have the companion pass?
This year, actually, we do not. We've had it for the last 3 years. And it's interesting because I think with COVID, that actually threw off our strategy a bit. And actually was a pretty busy year, busy 2020, busy 2021. We moved and we actually added another addition to our family. I was also in graduate school. And so we just had a lot going on and we just weren't sure. We just weren't sure about what was going on. Would we be able to travel again? We had this trip booked in 2020, I still remember. And we were going to be abroad for a month and we kept holding out hope like it's going to happen. They say it's going to get better. And long story short, it actually happened a year later last summer where we were able to stay in Europe for a month with our 3 kids. And the youngest was 6 months at the time. And so we were just so nervous, but we were finally able to make it happen. So.
That's amazing. What cities, what countries in Europe did you stay in?
So we did 30 days. All of July, we were gone last year. We started with Madrid. We did Madrid. And then after that, we spent a week in Granada. My husband and I had been prior to the pandemic. So I want to say fall of 2019. We had actually done a 2-week trip, just me and him, Spain and Italy. And we just loved the vibe in Granada. And we were like, we have to bring the older two back. It's just, they have to experience this. And there's so much history, so much culture, so much to do. So we started with, like I said, Madrid. Granada was a week. My older daughter had always wanted to go to Paris. I'm not sure what she understood about Paris, or maybe it's just a tween thing. I'm not sure. But so we had to make that happen for her. So from Granada, we went to Paris for a week, and Istanbul, Turkey had also been on our list for a while. And so we ended our trip with 10 days in Turkey.
As you were doing grad school while points and miles, while being a mom and while everything else, did that impact your points and miles strategy at all being in grad school?
I want to say yes and no at the same time. I wasn't thinking too much about points and miles just because I had a newborn. I was tired. I was exhausted. But in the back of my mind, I knew that, it wasn't always going to be like this. Travel was eventually going to open back up. And for full transparency, our Europe trip wasn't completely on points and miles. It was actually also a graduation gift that we had worked towards and saved towards for a while. But for the most part, I think I was just trying to go through the motions of just surviving life. So I wasn't actually actively doing it. But I think summer of 2021, after I graduated, I'm like, okay, we're going to do this again. We're going to get back in the game. And we just had a lot of places that we wanted to cross off the bucket list.
I think that's really important to acknowledge. And I feel like not enough people acknowledge that on social media and just the internet in general of life happens and people are like, oh, well, you should maximize for points and miles. But really, like, you should maximize for enjoying your life and spending time with your family and your health and enjoying life. So while people
Yeah.
ask me all the time about like, okay, so mathematically, like, is this the formula of where should I stay? I'm like, I mean, here's the math on that, but also you shouldn't base your entire life off of these little formulas that some points people came up with. You should actually decide what you want to do and then make that happen rather than just saying, okay, well, mathematically, here's how I should run my life because that's just not a fun life. And this is coming from someone who
Yeah.
is an athlete. Don't run your life based off of math formula.
You're so right because, like I said, the trip that we had planned, just being a month abroad in Europe, like I said, it was planned for summer of 2020. And, we had saved for that. We had just accounted for that. Um, and so a year later, like it finally happened, but it was on hold for the longest time. And then, life happened and graduate school and a baby. And we're like, oh my God, are we going to be able to do this with a 6-month-old? And mind you, our older two are a little bit older. They're 12 and 9 right now. And so we were just like, you know what? Life doesn't wait for anyone and we're going to make this happen. And, we're a little bit older parents this time around and we'll figure it out. And it's actually been a blessing in disguise because I think the more you travel, the more confidence you gain and you really just truly figure it out. And so I wish, I almost want to say, yes, I was totally on top of my points and miles game. And every minute that I wasn't traveling in 2020, I was thinking about how to, maximize points and miles, but that wouldn't be true. So
Yeah. No, I think anybody who says, "I'm totally on top of it with points and miles and everything else on top of, like, travel cancellations and delays and the pandemic and money," I'm like, they're lying. No one's on top of
y-
that much stuff, and it's about to topple down if you're on top of that much stuff."
yeah, this year, sure, that's changed, but I think 2020 and most of 2021 were like, okay, how do we just stay healthy and what's going on? So
For sure. So when did you do this Costa Rica trip? Was this before, during, or after the pandemic?
So Costa Rica was this March of 2022. And it's funny because this trip had been rescheduled twice. If I remember correctly, we first booked it, I want to say fall of 2021, maybe around October-ish. I want to say my kids have fall break. So it was probably around then. And then again, life happened. We weren't able to make it. And I rescheduled it for January 2022. And at that time, Omicron rates were rising again. And it's just, I'm a true believer of things always work out the way they should. And after going back and forth, knowing the inevitable of having to delay once again, again, that's the beauty of Southwest. I rescheduled it for spring break. And it actually worked out because the day or two right after I rescheduled it, my older two kids got COVID. And so it would have been really stressful having, flying there and then not being able to fly back because they would have tested positive. And so it actually just worked out. And they would have, and a little bit about us, just so you know, because with points and miles, we all know that the best award availability is not always going to fall in favor or in line with school schedules. And so last few years, we have traveled where my kids have missed 3, 4, 5 days of school at a time just because it is cheaper and I can find better award redemptions then. And so when I rescheduled it for March of this year, it actually fell right in line with their spring break. So it just worked out. They didn't have to miss school. We all tested negative, and so it was amazing.
That is a fantastic way that fate just kind of worked out.
Yep, yep.
And so with the Southwest program too, it's just so easy to, like you mentioned, cancel flights, rebook flights, get stuff deposited into your points bank immediately. So at least you didn't have to worry about a whole bunch of cancellation fees too.
I did not, and I love that. Like the refund comes right away, the points come back right away, and like I said, one of the reasons that there's still our family like favorite airline is because they're just so family friendly. And now that we have a little one again, we're still with Southwest. And also when my husband travels, I should add that it's just easier for us to earn the companion pass because he books all his flights, all his hotels, all his work related expenses on the card. And so as opposed to, let's say, maybe a different strategy of getting two cards or whatnot, we're able to just earn it faster. And so we're like, yep, that's a keeper.
Did you have to deal with anything annoying when you had to rebook your hotels?
In reference to Costa Rica, we actually did an Airbnb. So, especially the last few years, because we need a little bit more space now, and I've always been used to travel hacking for just the four of us. And now that we're a family of five, we need two hotel rooms. And the last few years we've just been doing Airbnb. So actually the people were very, very nice. We found the cutest little Airbnb in Costa Rica. And when I rescheduled, I was like, hey, I'll get back to you, thinking, who knows when I'm going to be able to book this again. When I reached out in March, they were still available, and they totally accommodated for us and gave us the same rate. So it was actually, like I said, it was fate and it just really worked out for us.
Perfect. Did you do any kind of travel hacks to do the Airbnb, or is that one just kind of a cash rate?
We did. So we had my sister with us. So she chipped in for the Airbnb. And at that same time, I had also gotten the Capital One Venture X card when the offer was at 100K and it came in with the vacation rental credit. So we applied that with family pitching in. And then obviously our cash rate that we pitched in was, a lot less than what we would have had if it was just flat out, just the full price.
Nice. Yeah, that was a really good sign up bonus perk back when VentureX had that. They don't have it anymore, but it's still a really good card. You still get the $300 annual travel credit, $100 TSA PreCheck credit, the lounge access, the top tier status with Hertz. So lots of different perks that you get with that card for $395. I think it's probably a lot better than the Chase Sapphire Reserve, honestly, for people.
Yeah, and when a lot of people actually reach out to me, I like that because sometimes I don't always have a plan. Like, yeah, maybe I am looking at trips for next year, but I don't know exactly what I'm doing right now. There's five of us. The baby's going to be turned 2 in December, and I'm like, oh my goodness, where can I take five of us on points and miles? So I think a card like that, I really love the fact with the purchase eraser option that I just really love that. So I have flexibility as far as like if I want to put a hotel charge or an airline charge. I just love having that flexibility with that card. So yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites right now.
When you flew into Costa Rica, did you fly into San Jose or Liberia, or what was the airline route that you did?
We did Liberia. We flew into Liberia. Yep.
Because Southwest can do two, like, either of those airports. When we went to Costa Rica years ago, I think there was a direct flight from Denver to San Jose. We might have had a layover somewhere. I do not remember what the Southwest route was back then, but we flew Southwest as well. And for anybody who does not fly Southwest, there's a lot of other options as well. You can fly JetBlue down to Costa Rica. British Airways flies down there. You can use Singapore Airlines to book Alaska Airlines flights sometimes, according to an upgraded points article that I'm scanning through right now. So you can do that from Los Angeles to San Jose or Liberia. And this is actually the cheapest way to fly from Los Angeles to Costa Rica. It's only 24,000 KrisFlyer miles for round trip economy, which is a crazy good deal. You could do Delta. It's going to cost you a little more, but if you're in the Atlanta hub, you can do that for about 30,000 miles round trip. So lots and lots of different options. Oh, you can also do a lot of different United routes as well, starting at 35,000 points round trip. So do you remember how many points it costs for you
I
guys?
was just going to say, I was going to say though, I hadn't looked into those airlines, but for us, I want to say if I remember correctly, it was definitely less than 20 per person. It was about 17-ish, I want to say, maybe a little bit more per person on Southwest. Yeah, we did have a stop though. And I feel like I'm not sure if it's just with international flights or what, but especially during the pandemic last year or two, every time I searched for flights on Southwest, they've always been stopover. I think I just got lucky maybe in our recent trip to New York where it was like nonstop. And I was so grateful for that because it was a very late flight with the baby. But anything else, I'm always finding stopovers. But it was actually, I was surprised that I got it for less than 20 round trip per person. So
What's your home airport? Are you at a major airport or a smaller one that's going to have to do
I'm
connecting?
in Dallas. So lots of options here for that.
For sure. And you also get the Capital One Lounge and all of that with your Venture X too.
Right. I haven't actually seen it. I'm excited to, we have a trip coming up next month. And so, we will not be taking the Southwest, we'll be doing United. And so I'm definitely wanting to get some time to check out that lounge.
And for anybody who's thinking, okay, what if I don't want to do an Airbnb? What if I want to do hotels? You have tons of options around Costa Rica, depending on where you are staying. If you are Team Hyatt, one of the most popular redemptions is the Ondas Costa Rica Resort at the Peninsula Papagayo, I think is how it's pronounced. And that's a little
Yep.
bit outside of Liberia. You also have a whole bunch of hotels that Hyatt recently acquired, like Secrets, Papagayo, or Dreams Hotel. You also have a couple of the SLH hotels, or if you want to fly into San Jose and go from there, you have the Hyatt Place in San Jose. And when my husband and I went to Costa Rica, it was way back in the day, probably pre 2017, because I feel like I wasn't really into
Okay.
points and miles yet. So we flew
Mm,
into San Jose and we actually just took a car out to Jaco, which is one of the closer beach
okay.
towns. It's normally known as a party city, but it actually didn't feel that way to us much at all. And we stayed in this hostel, which, if you guys are into hostels, it is called Room to Board. The two is a number, and it's the only hostel I've ever stayed at, but it felt more like a hotel because we got a private room. We didn't share a room with anyone else.
That's good.
And it was so good. And they had like free hiking, free yoga, a lot of different events that they would just organize for you. And they had the best pizza ever. It was like a coal fired barbecue chicken pizza, and it was fantastic.
That's something to keep in mind. It's funny you mentioned that because the street that we were on did have a bunch of hostels, but obviously, like I mentioned, we were with the family, and so we had an Airbnb. But the hubby and I, we do want to go back to Costa Rica and actually experience the beaches. We didn't get to do any of that. We actually did more active stuff like hiking and the hanging bridges, and so we didn't really do any of the relaxing beach or nothing related to that. But it's funny you mentioned that because we passed by so many hostels when we would be driving just out and about in the city.
Yeah, I think people often just associate Costa Rica with beaches, but you can do a lot of cool rainforest stuff
Yeah.
there too.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, we were just trying to find activities that could just work for all of our kids, all the ages for us too. And it's funny because we vacation, but like we're the type of people where we don't really know how to relax. Like we get there and we're like, okay, we're just gonna chill and do nothing. But that's actually not in our blood. And we actually have to be like, okay, so we only have like 4 days. What are we gonna do each day? And just kind of out and about and just keeping these kids active and tiring them out. And so just crashing early.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that sometimes if you're just like, I want to sleep. I want to catch up on sleep on vacation. Then I know how that goes. Speaking of sleeping, other hotel options. So if you guys are Hotel Marriott, there's a lot of AC hotels out and around San Jose or other cities in Costa Rica. There's an Aloft in San Jose if you want to stay in that Bagaya region. There's an autograph collection hotel called El Mangrove. It's like mangrove, but it's
Hmm.
literally spelled out El Mangrove, which I think is hilarious. Then there's a lot of Marriott hotels actually. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you have a lot of Marriott options. If you wanted to do team IHG, you have the Holiday Inn in San Jose, the Crown Plaza San Jose, Beachy Conference Center. I actually have stayed at this hotel. I don't remember anything about it, so it wasn't particularly memorable, but it was decently close to the airport and I had a free IHG night to use. So
Nice,
I
nice.
used it there.
We're definitely gonna have to keep that in mind because we honestly we really do want to go back without the kids and just stay at a nice resort and whether it's like the thermal spas or whatnot, just be pampered and just relax and really just be able to like not do much.
Hey there. Some of the redemptions we talk about on this show sound incredible and aspirational. And I know Instagram can make it seem like points influencers are earning points effortlessly and endlessly. But the reality is that most people don't really have that much money to spend and don't want to open up that many credit cards. And I don't think the correct answer should be for me or any other influencer to just keep shilling out more cards while saying that sign up bonuses are the end all be all. Am I wrong? On this show, we've discussed so many different ways to earn points while still staying within your budget. I'm actually putting together a series of tutorials with step-by-step guides for how to easily earn more points without opening 20 cards. If you're interested in getting early access and don't want to miss out on these strategies, check out geobreezetravel.com/waitlist, which I have linked for you in the show notes. In the meantime, we also offer some next level tips and tricks in the monthly masterclasses within the Patreon, and you can find a link to that in the show notes as well. This week's Patreon shout out goes out to Carice. Thank you so much for being part of the Geobreeze Travel Patreon community. Oh, the thermal spas. That sounds so
uh,
nice right now.
because we
Did you
drive by that and we're like not gonna be able to do that with the baby.
did you guys see any awesome wildlife while you were out and about?
Yeah, we did see sloth. We did like a sloth tour. And so I think we saw like two. But for us, we're like, oh, an exotic animal. Wow, something we don't see on the daily. And the kids were really, really excited too. And a lot of just wildlife and nature. We got woken up by like the birds at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So it actually worked out that we'd go to bed early, start our day early, because by 5:30, you'd be up whether you want to be up or not. So you'd be woken up easily. And not by the baby, by the birds.
There are a lot of birds. We saw
Yep.
toucans while we were there. We saw the scarlet macaw parrots. So if you are into bird watching, Costa Rica, I hear, is like prime location for bird watching. I forget what other animals we saw too, but I think we saw sloths and some other stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Slots and birds for sure. Yeah.
and then I guess we never covered the Hilton hotels. If you are team Hilton, a lot of them are going to be more in the San Jose area. You have the Hilton San Jose, La Sabana, Hilton Garden Inn San Jose, Doubletree, and Hampton Inn, Grand Hotel Costa Rica, which is a Curio hotel. So you have lots of options no matter what hotel brand you
So
tend to favor.
it's interesting you mentioned that because I think amongst the travel hacking community, you always hear about Team Hyatt when it comes to Costa Rica, at least. And, though having the Hyatt points, like I said, you know, I have to become a little bit more expert when it comes to travel hacking for now, a family of five. So when I looked at that, I was like, okay, that's not going to work because we're going to need two rooms or we need more. But I've mostly heard about the Hyatt ones, but it's interesting you mentioned all the other brands. Didn't realize that there was that many options.
There's unfortunately, it does not look like a residence inn for. Oh, wait. Yeah, there is a residence inn in San Jose. And those are great if they have any of the two-bedroom suites for families, because then instead of having to pay for two rooms, two different hotel rooms, you can just get a two-bedroom suite. Or if you have platinum status or higher with Marriott, you can apply different suite upgrades. So then you can have more room where maybe the parents stay in the bedroom and then you do a pull-out couch for your two older kids and the baby just stays with the parents.
Right.
Or with Hyatt, you can use your suite upgrade awards there as well if you have gotten 50 or 60 nights or more and gotten globalist status, then they'll give you some Sweet Night awards. And you can use those for up to a week at a time. Where Marriott, you have to use one Sweet Night per night. So if you have five, that can only cover you for 5 nights. But with Hyatt, if you earn globalist status, you're going to get four of these Sweet Night certificates, and each one can be good for up to 7 nights. So that's like a month that you can stay up to. That's like a month that you can stay in suites as a family, and that can save you a ton of money and points as well if you can just kind of upgrade to a bigger room and have your kids stay on a pull-out couch.
Right. And not to mention, I think Hyatt also has the family rate plan, right? When you book the first room on points and then the second room, half off the cash rate. So I'm not sure. I haven't looked into the Hyatts, like I said, at Costa Rica, but I wonder if they do have those options.
That is a really good point too. Yeah, for anybody who's into family travel, check out the Hyatt family rate because that can save you quite a bit as well.
We have a beach vacation that we're really looking forward to in October to the Bahamas. And so when I was looking, I was like, we're going to get a nice hotel, a nice resort. We're going to change it up. We've been doing Airbnbs for a while and we deserve a nicer, just something different that you want to learn and experience. So that's exactly what we did. We got one room on points, second room for my kids. For the older two, half off the cash rate. So they're pretty excited because they each get their own bed. And so they're like, there's no Airbnb where we get kicked to, the sofa bed. I'm like, nope, nope, you're getting your own bed this time.
Yeah, in the Bahamas, you have the Grand Hyatt Baha Mar,
That's where we're
which
staying.
is either the largest or second largest Hyatt property in the world. It is
Hmm.
huge, and they have a water park that's finally finished up and built out. So if you're paying with Hyatt points, you don't have to pay the resort fee to enter there, which is highly
Sweet.
expensive. So that's a great one for families too.
Yeah, we're excited. I had heard a lot of good things. I mean, reviews can be mixed, but when I saw that they had the family rate, I'm like, okay, we're gonna give this a shot and try. And they seem to have a lot of accommodations for on the resort, so we won't have to venture out too much, which is we just want to kind of sit and just really just relax.
When you were in Costa Rica, were there any particular food destinations or restaurants or anything that really stood out to you? Or any excursions that you would recommend to people other than the general hiking?
I think the foods, I can't say anything stood out to me in particular. I just have to say everything was just so fresh, like fresh seafood, fresh, whether it's shrimp or fish, it was just so fresh. And my husband, where he's from Bangladesh, and so they eat a lot of seafood. So he knows his fish really well. And it was really good. And I think there's just the freshness all around. We just loved it. And just the diversity, like, it was just so easily accessible, like, the locals, we'd go out and be, like, late and be like, "No, we can just stir up something for you," and it'd be like, "Oh, I don't know if we can have this," but, you kinda hesitate, right? Because you're like, "Okay, should I eat from here? Am I gonna get sick? Am I in a foreign country?" But it was just so fresh and it was just so good, and we that actually kinda caught me off guard because I guess, especially with the younger ones, we worry, but it was really good. Nothing that stood out in particular, it was just all really good.
In the part of Costa Rica that you guys were in, did you need a lot of Spanish? And also, how is your Spanish?
Oh, I hate to admit being in Texas, I should have better Spanish, but I don't. My kids, though, are taking Spanish in school. So they actually, and one thing I should add when it comes to just, and one of the reasons why we also choose Airbnbs is because we just love to just immerse our family in like the local culture. Not that we don't want the nice resort or the nice hotel, but it's really important for us to just do, the atypical, not always just do the typical tourist things, especially as they get older. We really want them to visit a new place, visit a country, and really learn and just be able to just, you know, understand the culture and kind of bring something back with them. And so they would walk down to the local grocer every morning. We would give them the currency, watch them from afar, and they would go get breakfast or they would go get bread or they would go get like, fresh fruit in the morning or fresh juice. And our Spanish isn't that great, but they were able to converse in whatever little Spanish they learned in school.
That's awesome. And that is such a fun exercise to just give teenagers, especially at that age, 9 and 12. That's such a good age to just say, hey, you learned a little bit of Spanish in school. Go ahead and be independent. And yeah, if you're only a few feet away, then you can
Like
watch
literally
them.
we could just open the door of our Airbnb and it was literally down the street and everyone was just so friendly. We felt safe. We felt totally comfortable. People were so nice. The owner or like the managers of our Airbnb, we could call them in a heartbeat if we needed anything. And it was just nice just to be amongst the locals for us. That's just very important to us. And sometimes we might, give up the nicer resort or the nicer hotel and just kind of go for like more of the local experience. Also, we frankly speaking also get more space, which right now for us is very important. But we just really thoroughly enjoy just being able to immerse our kids and just being like, no, you're fine, you can converse, go get us breakfast.
Great tips. Speaking of great tips, what would you say is your number one travel hacking tip from everything you've learned in the last few years of being in the points and miles world?
That's such an interesting question you ask. I want to say, you know, it's okay to not always have a strategy. If I know me and I like to work backwards, and sometimes when I don't know exactly what I'm doing, I can get nervous about that. And I know a lot of people are like that, but it's totally okay to go for a card that has a higher offer, whether it's Chase or whether it's Citi or whether it's Capital One, especially if there's flexible rewards currency. Don't get too caught up in the fact that, oh my God, what am I going to do once I get these 80,000 points? It's okay because higher offers, yes, they'll come back around, right? But maybe they won't come back around when you need to plan a trip. But let's say you went for the higher offer, you have the points, and you don't have the total plan. It's okay. You can reach out to content creators, you can research, you can figure it out. So don't get too caught up in, I don't know exactly what I'm doing with my points, or I don't have a trip planned, or I don't have it all figured out. It's okay. And I think in the beginning, I was hesitant. Your credit's on the line. And, there's so many things, and we have these stereotypes or just these, notions in our head. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Right. So that's probably the number one thing I would say. Just keep an open mind. And the more you do it, wash, rinse, repeat, you'll figure it out.
Especially as you are becoming more advanced in points and miles, then these flexible points, you will be able to find something for them. I generally caution beginners to not jump on high offers just because they're there, especially if it's not transferable. Like if it's a really high chase offer, okay, yeah, you're probably okay to just go ahead and jump on it. If it's like a really high Delta card offer and you don't really fly Delta, I would not necessarily do that. Or like a really high Hilton offer or something else, just because something is really popular on Instagram, because I think it is worth noting as a content creator. People talk about what they're paid to talk about. So that's something
Right.
to keep in mind as well. But I do agree that, especially as you become more advanced, those flexible points do come in handy, and you will be able to quickly intuit what to do with them anyway. But for any beginners, I do want to just bring out that nuance and comment on it that, like, if you're a beginner, it is better to have a little bit of a strategy. Once you're more advanced, it's
Right,
much
right.
easier to finagle.
And you couldn't be more correct. And I should, correct myself when I say higher offers. When people reach out to me for a consultation, I tell them don't go for like the Marriott, for example. I know that has a higher offer on that right now. For something like that, you do need to have a tentative plan, or whether it's Hilton. Those are not cards that I did in the first few years, just because I was like, I have no idea. So when I say higher offers, I'm meaning more like obviously Chase or maybe City, or even stuff that if you don't have the transfer partners figured out, okay, sure, book something in the portal. But you're absolutely correct, or maybe Southwest is like the only one I think that I felt comfortable with, like as a co-branded, card to, because I knew I would always be able to go somewhere with, whether it's domestic or even a few international places. But you couldn't be more right about that. So when I say that, I mean more of like the flexible rewards currency, higher offers, not like a Marriott or a Hilton, like you said, like one of those where you definitely need to have maybe a little bit more of a strategy.
Yeah. No, the flexible plans are great. I know a lot of people obsess over 5 over 24 as well. And they're like, well, I've got like
Yeah.
4 Chase cards, but this new flexible rewards plan, whether it's Capital One, City, Built, Amex, any of those that have multiple transfer partners, they're going to be a better bet than, like, well, should you really like cram in one more Chase co-branded card in there, or should you move on to the next flexible points currency? Honestly, like, if you're 3 over 24, 4 over 24, and a really good offer comes up with flexible points, then it could be worth looking into.
Yeah, and I think each one, like for me too, like I said in the beginning, we had Southwest and we had Chase. And do we do transfer partners in the beginning? No, but like we would book stuff in the portal. But at the end of the day, we got good redemptions for us at that time when we were first starting out. And I think with Chase, that's a no-brainer for a starter. Or like Capital One, I love that even now just because of the purchase eraser option, right? If I want to charge something and erase it later. So I think for beginners, cards like that, like you said, absolutely, that's more in line with that strategy.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And speaking of, can you give a shout out to somebody else on the internet who listeners should follow for awesome points and miles advice?
So lately I've been loving Stacy from Points for Family Travel. She has amazing reels and amazing content. I think this is like her third trip to Europe this year, and we're like halfway through the year. So that is hashtag goals for sure. I know I want to definitely visit Europe more often. And I think another thing I can relate to her is, just travel hacking for larger families to Europe. So yeah, amazing content she has.
Perfect. And where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me Hassan on Holiday on Instagram or on Facebook, and also email as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for coming onto the show. This was fantastic getting to hear about your trip to Costa Rica, and also just some very like hashtag real talk about what it's like to do points and miles as a family. I feel like there's probably not enough of that on the internet because everybody's always just posting perfect redemptions and like the 20 cents per point of like, here's the greatest possible redemption you can get. But I think it is important to oftentimes just discuss, hey, there's lots of different ways to live a travel hacking lifestyle. Here's how it goes for families sometimes. Here's how it goes for solo travelers sometimes. So I do appreciate that perspective that you bring too. I think that's really important in the world of points and miles.
Thank you. And I'm really honored to be here. And that's one of the reasons why I felt like it was important for me to come on this platform just a few months back, is because when I would do the research in Points and Miles, I would see these amazing redemptions for single people or even couples. And well, that's amazing. And I would love to do that maybe once every few years when I get the chance. It wasn't my daily reality. And another thing that it's also important to note is that it's okay if sometimes you are having to pay cash. And I know, it almost felt like, okay, am I allowed to mention this, or is this like shaming? But that's just the reality. Maybe we're taking less trips as opposed to someone who's single or even a couple. But it's okay because we're definitely getting to travel a little bit more than we ever have before. And we're still saving a lot of money.
Absolutely. And really that's all you need for a good redemption is if you are saving money on travel that you wanted to take anyway, it's a good use of points.
Yep. Couldn't agree more with that.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. If any of the cards mentioned in today's episode piqued your interest, please check out the links in the show notes for more information on any of the cards. Also, if you apply for a card using the links on that page, I may receive a commission too, so please and thank you. P.S. I hear the links work better in Internet Explorer or Safari, and sometimes the credit card applications tend to glitch out in Chrome. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to make even more travel hacking friends, please sign up for the Patreon to access our monthly masterclass hangouts. We dive deep into a particular points program each month, and you'll get to ask all of your travel hacking questions and enjoy being around other people who enjoy points and miles just as much as you and I do. If you would like an invite to the next one, head over to geobreezetravel.com/hangouts to sign up to be on the invite list. Take care and happy travels!